Your government wants to digitize everything. I think we are in that point where governments are getting smart to what we're doing in those little back rooms, and now they want more of it. So, a little bit before I get into how you're actually going to digitize everything, because I've got a foolproof plan for you to get to that point. So the U.S. Digital Service, as many of you know who are in digital service agencies around the world, is a small, well not small anymore, but scrappy team of geeks and technologists and designers who are trying to, among other things, just bring better digital services to the citizens that they serve. Our model is a little bit different, so I wanted to explain it a little bit. We have chartered teams through different agencies. My own team is through Department of Homeland Security. We have teams helping veterans. We have teams helping military active service members. We have teams at HHS. And we also have other teams at Department of Education, as well as many others that I'm forgetting. Hopefully they don't see this video. So, a little bit of background on the team specifically at immigration. So, some of you know DACA. I'll explain it very briefly. U.S. immigration law. So in 2014, President Obama extended DACA, so that's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, meaning he gave broader protections to those who came here illegally as children. And with that came about 800,000 people who came out of the woodwork and said, I'm here illegally, and they gave their information to the federal government. And President Obama said, we need a quicker, more efficient way for them to come out of the woodwork and show themselves. So he asked his small ragtag team back in 2014 to go to the immigration agency and fix the problem. So we did. So that's where we all are now, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services team. Since 2014, we've worked on DACA as well as temporary protective services, so your people seeking special asylum from Haiti, Ecuador, Guatemala. We help refugees, asylum seekers. We worked on green card renewals, and most recently, naturalization, so becoming a citizen of the United States. And with that came one gnarly problem, and that is ELIS, the aptly named Electronic Immigration System. There's definitely a L shouldn't be there. Get it? Like Ellis Island? So the thing about Ellis, and as the logo probably shows you, is that this thing has been around for about 10 plus years. Its main goal was 100% electronic processing of all immigration for the United States. Who doesn't want that? So of course, 10 years ago, they set out on this course. We are now working on Ellis 2, not Ellis 1. That was a disaster. So Ellis 2 was reorganized around a different structure of Agile and all of those other jargon words, and Congress gave them more money. Now into what you've all been waiting for, that 10-step, did I mention that before? 10-step foolproof, tested plan to answer this request when your stakeholders ask it. And that is, nope. This is not going to happen. You're not going to digitize it that quickly, especially when the ask is that quickly put on without any research or anything to back it. One of those case studies that we found was that USCIS, the immigration agency, tried to do this before. They started by saying, well, we need all of these A files, or the people files if you were an immigrant. We need those to be electronically viewed by our staff. So they set out to digitize the 18 million individual files that were sitting in a limestone cave, no kidding, a limestone cave in the middle of the United States, known as the National Record Center. So this would be a staff member picking up a giant manila folder. Some of you may be immigrants of your own country, so you may have a similar process. It's a giant manila file of all of your information, anything that the government might want to know. They remove all the staples, they flatten it, they prepare it, they scan it, and they put it all in a PDF. And the theory was that they would do this 18 million times. This took roughly 10 minutes per file, so they quickly stopped. They quit that immediately. There's a picture of the awesomely interior decorated office where they're allowing these limestone columns to permeate and go naturally in with the taupe colored government building. They've seamlessly transitioned from something very cool to something very government. But it is a cool place to visit nonetheless. So that was one of their earlier attempts at digitizing the files. The future and what we've now realized is that it's going to be more of a day forward plan, meaning any new applications will try to be electronically processed and applied for. Which brings me to the specific one of naturalization. So this is a very oversimplified process for our naturalization process. I wish it was this simple, but it's not. So now, thank goodness, thanks to partners with USCIS as well as the US Digital Service, you can apply for your naturalization for the United States online, electronically, which is amazing. There's some pre-processing that goes into it. There's an interview, there's an oath ceremony, and the digital case is closed. You are now updated in all of those blockchains and databases in the background, and you are now a US citizen. But with that electronic process, we haven't solved for anything. When the paper comes into that process and has to become part of the electronic file. So these are just a few examples of different things where paper has to inject into that electronic process seamlessly and then be served up to anybody who wants to view it. So new evidence that came to light. Signed affidavits and signed things of support have to be scanned in and added to the person's file. All of these types of things have to be accounted for. And one of the biggest ones that wasn't accounted for was this N445, Classic Government Form Number. I like to call it the "Have you done anything between your interview and today's oath" questionnaire. It's essentially a thing that says, have you done anything that might take away your eligibility from becoming a citizen? Because an interview happens, and then 2 months later, you take the oath. So there has to be some sort of questionnaire where the government kind of saves its ass and says, we did a double check, and they haven't done anything since then that would hinder them from becoming a citizen. The biggest thing with that is that at an oath ceremony, somebody gives up their permanent residence card and get a certificate of naturalization. So they do get a document in place of their green card. However, that is not the best identity document. Who here actually knows what a US green card generally looks like if you didn't already look at that? Everybody should be raising their hands. You're looking at it right there. Through our user research, though, we found that a lot of law enforcement agencies don't actually know what the certificate of naturalization looks like for the US. So imagine you're pulling somebody over who's just a newly minted US citizen, and they give you this giant 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with their picture on it that looks like and truly was printed out of an inkjet HP printer. You'd probably say, oh, they went to Staples and got one of those cool certificates with the marbled background and printed their name and date of birth on it. These immigrants, or should I say new citizens, want the passport. That's what they need. But they can't get or apply for their passport until this N445 document is uploaded. So this is what it looks like. 7 questions. Easy. 8 questions, I guess. 8 questions. Have you traveled? Have you been married since then? Have you widowed? Things of that nature. This was the process for doing this. One at a time, they would scan a document, save a document. They wouldn't trust that they did the first 2 steps correctly, so they'd open the PDF and check it. They'd find the ceremony, upload the file, and that was it. And they did this numerous times. So it's not usually the best thing when you have one person who has to do this for a location ceremony. And truly, this was the reaction that they were getting so close to doing. They were complaining every day about this. It was actually the reason we were in the field asking and user researching with them, was because they were getting to this breaking point. And of course, somebody was like, let's just use the iPads. We have iPads and we're doing a bunch of stuff with iPads, digital iPads. Like, let's do that kind of stuff. Yes, it's true, we did implement an iPad solution for part of the process. At the interview stage, applicants are now able to do things like the civic test or the or signing any changes that occurred. So if through your questions you say, no, my birth date actually was not in February, it was in March, the officer would update it and then have you sign the affidavit saying, yes, we agree to this. So applicants are now able to sign and do things digitally. Although through usability testing, yes, the US government does usability testing, we found out just how fragile and slow the iPad interface was for the immigrant population. This is a very special population. These aren't technologists like we are. Signatures were slow and methodical, and it took longer to read the prompts. They actually read line by line when it was displayed on an iPad versus seeing the signature box and signing away. So they were actually reading things, which is a good thing, actually. But we realized that it took them significantly longer to get through some of the most simple tasks on an iPad. And palm rejection and stray marks were rampant. And these are sometimes used for the signatures on their naturalization certificate. So they are signing that with all of those stray marks and palm rejection things, and that's sometimes approved, and sometimes they have to try it 5 or 6 times. Now, to the developer who said, dude, let's use the iPads. This is an oath ceremony check-in in Los Angeles, California. In one day, 12,000 people become a US citizen once a month, mostly year-round. There was no logistical way that we were going to implement iPads for this type of immigrant population to efficiently get through this process. So we quickly dismissed that developer who wanted to use iPads. Now, many of you are already solutioning, and you're probably thinking app, website, authenticated experience. We got you. We're headed that way, but that's not the point of this talk. That would have taken way too long. So we fixed it with something that I personally think is super cool. Little thing called a quick response code or QR code. If you want to snap this actually goes somewhere pretty cool. Trust me, it does. I can leave it up there for a hot second or just keep going. You're gonna miss out. It's pretty neat. So the QR code was from the 90s. It was used by a subsidiary of Toyota Motor Company to quickly see where car parts were going around a factory. And now we're using it on an immigration form, which is pretty neat. And how it looks like on the form, I'll give it a quick second. I see some phones up. You got 2 seconds. 1, 2, and it's gonna be gone. So this is how it looks like on the form. This is what we edited. Now what's in the QR code? You're probably thinking this is probably the applicant's information. Funny enough, it's actually just the applicant's registration number, which is a unique ID that is different to each individual person. So all we've done, and the way we describe this to our stakeholders, policymakers, and people with the offices that approve this, was think of the QR code as a different typeface. All we're doing is showing that A number twice. One that a machine can read, and one that a human can read. And that actually got it through. Surprisingly, I thought I'd have to argue a little bit more for that. But that's what it is. It's just a QR code on the top. So that coupled with a pretty nifty document scanning option where it allows you to scan in the browser real time came up to something that is pretty cool, kind of a nifty way of decoding the QR codes. So in this case, in the new future state, in the way that's happening right now, a user's bulk scanning 50 to 100 of these forms, it's creating a PDF file, and this QR code decoder is essentially putting them in all the different little files. It's saying that's you, and it's putting you in your electronic A file. And this is literally how I described it to the development team, because I was so excited. I couldn't think of any better way. So I was literally just making it rain with paper 8.5 by 11 sheets while I was describing how the QR code decoder was going to work. Thankful to say it did work. So what used to take about 300 hours, this is 1 to 5 people taking 300 man hours, so not always one person, to upload 6,000 of those forms. And that was the morning ceremony. They still had to upload the other 6,000 from the afternoon ceremony that day. Like I said, 12,000 people. We cut that down to 7 hours using a QR code. That means that applicants were able to get their naturalization ceremony certificate, and within 1 business day, they were able to apply for a passport, whereas it used to take up to a month. So that is pretty cool, because to see the look on their faces when they're able to go upstairs even and apply that same afternoon, that is a pretty cool thing to say. And I will say that is one of the benefits to user research, is the ability to immediately validate your success criteria and see it happen in real time. So with that usability testing and that user research, we learned some lessons. Things didn't always go as we thought. Documents collected are maybe ripped, torn, or dirty. These are sent to the applicant in the mail. So they might have ripped it. Luckily, the QR code has good error recognition, but it might be dirty. Scanners have a max capacity. We broke 3 scanners trying to jam in more than 100 of these forms because the officers could not get it fast enough. They wanted it faster, faster, faster. And we said 7 hours is pretty good, people. Chill. The app, the Ellis app online, can't control the hardware, all of it. These folks were setting their contrast to 100%, meaning these things were coming out terrible. Error handling on no QR code detected, so the person put it upside down. And so the machine couldn't read any QR codes. And my favorite, and all of the usability testers and user researchers, I get giddy about this. This is one of the coolest lessons learned, is origami. What that means is, you might be able to tell what's happening here is the first iteration of this, we put the QR code in the middle of a page. How many people fold it the classic 1, 2, 3, stick it in your pocket? This, coupled with the contrast problem that many people were doing, meant that there was a line, a fold line, right in the middle of the QR code, rendering it obsolete for every single person who did this. So to me, my PM came running down the hallway going, we failed. And I said, that is so cool, because we were able to shift around some of the elements and move a QR code to a better position. But as a researcher and a usability tester, I thought that was the coolest thing. That we found out a really interesting use case that we didn't even think about. Who thinks how somebody's going to fold a sheet of paper? You all might have. I didn't. So this was a simple problem for 2 groups. We talk about the fact that we're here to help the publics that we serve, and that is true. So we did help the applicants who couldn't apply for passports due to the backlog of uploading this file. But we also help that government civil servant who often silently toils in the background, again, almost ready to rip their computer off their desk with outdated tools as they spend 300 useless hours doing a task that we could have come in and helped them earlier. And they're saying to themselves, there has to be a better way, but they don't have the empowerment to actually come up and say, I think there's a better way. It wasn't sexy. We didn't use the iPads, and I'm fine with that. We used a tool from the 1990s in a new way. That's what we did. So if I could leave you with a couple of things, as your governments are spending budgets on your offices left and right, expanding your staff, procuring all of this technology, evangelizing design even, don't forget your scrappy design roots. Solve problems as simply as you can. So be smart. Being simple doesn't have to just begin and end with colors, typefaces, pixels, and layouts. Thanks.